welcome to today's Procreate coffee break. Today what we're going to be doing is creating this fun little JK or joking sticker. I loved how these letters turned out, where this little flourish here becomes the dot and the J. Love the color palette. I also tried it with a couple of other colors if you want to look and playing with different textures, so certainly don't feel that you have to stick to my color palette. I will provide it for you if you want to follow along, but follow along however, and make this your own, however you'd like to do so. So if you open up, if you haven't already done so, download. I've provided a file for you, a Procreate file that you can load, should load directly into Procreate when you go to open it. It has 3 layers included on it. It has our lettering layer, which I've locked for now so we don't accidentally change our letters. It has our color palette layer, and it has the steps that we're going to follow. So if I turn off the other 2 layers, we can see what the plan is for today's tutorial. We are going to create our sticker brush, our sticker monoline, if you haven't done so in one of our previous tutorials. We're then going to draw that beautiful gradient. We're going to use the Gaussian blur to blend it all together. We'll then apply a clipping mask so that it sticks only to our letters. We will then set our background color. We'll draw the sticker outline. We will put a shadow under that sticker outline just to make it pop, and then put a little texture on our background, and then our sticker will be ready to share. So it looks like a lot, but it's actually super simple and a really fun project. So with that, let's get going. The steps layer you don't need to keep. I just like to embed it in the file rather than sending you an additional workbook with all of the steps that you can refer to it easily. It's right there. So let's next visit our color palette. I provided the colors here down below. So what you can do, I already have mine loaded, but if you want to load them somehow into a color palette to refer to more easily, you go into your palettes by clicking on the color dot, and we're going to add plus and create a new palette. And there we simply hold with our finger, not with our pencil, with our finger, hold on each color. That will set, you see when that dot comes up, it shows us current color at the bottom and what we're setting it to at the top. My color has now been set to that red, and so I can just click in here and it will put that red into my new palette. So I do the same with the orange, hold, and then click up here. The blue, you'll be able to see that it shows the orange on the bottom, that's my current color, and that beautiful blue at the top. Purple, for those who've done this before, just a quick review as we go and we set our color palette for this project. Okay, that's it that we're going to use. We will use a pure white. Sorry. A little cough here. So the way I like to do that, I do have white saved in other colors, but just to make sure I'm getting pure white, I always go to the disc. I go to the upper left corner of the inner circle, and if I double click, it will snap to true white. So I now have true white set, and I can add that to my color palette at the bottom. Same if you do need true black. We don't for this project, but if you tap down here, it'll snap to true black for you as well, if you're ever looking for the pure color for something that you're working on. Okay, so with that, we've set our colors, so let's go back to our layers panel. We can turn off the color palette. We won't need it anymore. We won't need to refer to it. We are going to turn on our lettering layer, and we're almost ready to go. So the one thing we're going to do, I like to get everything ready at the beginning. So we are going to create that brush if you haven't already done so. So if you go into Procreate, we're going to come back to Industrial Layer later. But if you don't already have the monoline sticker brush, we are going to see, I already have one here, but what we're going to do to create that, you will have a standard monoline already there under calligraphy. So you're in the brush library, calligraphy, click on the monoline brush. We are going to swipe it towards the left, and we're going to duplicate it. We always duplicate our brushes before we make changes so that we have the original saved. We go into monoline, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go into properties, and we're going to bump up our max size. I don't know, around 650. What did I do? I should have checked this before. What did I do in my sticker monoline brush? Let me go under properties. I set my max size to 400. So if I go into the one we're doing here, we're going to click on it. Yours will probably say monoline 1 or monoline 2. Mine says 4. Properties. Max size, I am going to bump that up to about that 400 mark that we just looked at. You can also click here and type in 400 if you want to get exact and you don't want to sit. I think I always have the shakes and I can never get it exactly where I want it. And we are going to say done. If you want to change the name of it, like I had done up above, we can also go to about this brush, and at the top where it says monoline 4, you can just change that to say monoline sticker. I won't do it now because I have a monoline sticker brush already, but you can see how that's done. So you should have a monoline sticker just like I have here that we're going to use. We won't use it in step 1, but we will get to it pretty shortly. Actually, we might. Do you know what? Let's set that sticker monoline as our current brush, because we're going to do the fun part of drawing our gradient now, and having a slightly bigger brush is going to help us with that. So we're set on sticker monoline. We've created our new brush. We are ready to go. So let's go into our color palette. We're going to start with that red color, whether you're on this view or under the palette's view with your palette. Either should give you your colors. I've clicked on that beautiful red color. That's what I like to use as the center line, something that kind of pops in the middle. So I'm going to draw, I'm going to set my brush size. Yeah, I'm going to keep it up there on that 28%. And I'm going to draw, I'm going to go up to my blank layer. So make sure you have a blank layer above JK. If you don't for some reason, you just click the plus layer and you add in your layer there. All right, so we're on a layer, we have the right brush, we have the right color, the 3 things we always check before we draw. And I'm just going to kind of draw across. It doesn't have to be a perfect line. I didn't hold it to snap it perfectly straight. I like to draw well beyond where the letters are, because if I stop here, when I go to blur later, sometimes it pulls in a little bit. So it just helps make sure I'm going to have nice coverage. I am then going to move on to my orange color, and I'm going to add a line below, and I'm going to add a line above. And what I want to make sure is that I don't have any gaps in there. If anything, I'd prefer to be a little tight in. I'm going to take that blue color next, and there I want to make sure I have a bit of room for the purple, so I want to make sure a little bit is still showing at the bottom and the top. Doesn't have to be a lot. And finally I'm going to choose my purple color, and that I'm going to, there's no harm in coming right down again, just in case my blurring. There's nothing worse than getting this beautiful and then you go and you add your Gaussian blur and suddenly it pulls in a little bit. Okay, so I have all of my colors mapped out. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to stay on the same layer, but I'm going to take my layer, go over here to the adjustments menu, and I'm going to select Gaussian blur. And the Gaussian blur, it starts at 0. This is one where you drag your pencil across to up it. So you can see we're at 0% now. I put down my pencil, drag it to the right, and you'll see that number starts to go up. And as it goes up, you see the blur that it starts to have. So I don't want to bump it too high or I start to lose my letters. And you can see there's a good example of how the blur, once you have too much blur, it starts to pull in and you start to see your letters underneath. So we want something nice and opaque. I want to make sure I can still see that red, that it doesn't get lost too much in the orange, but that there's enough of a blur that there's a gradient between them. So I'm happy. What if I go down all the way to 20? I think I like 20. I can always go later and add a little bit more blur if I'm not too happy with it. Okay, so we've added our Gaussian blur. So what we see we have here now, we have our letters on one layer and we have this beautiful gradient on another layer. What we want to do is have the gradient apply only where the letters are. So the way that we do that is we click on our gradient layer and we clip the clipping mask, and it's going to clip it to the layer that's directly below it. So when I do this, the magic happens, poof, and we can see there that the gradient that we created is now applied only where our letters are. I love this effect. You can have so much fun playing with so many colors on this. I hope you do afterwards. Okay, so we've applied our clipping mask. That was step number 4. Now, before we add our sticker background, we need to add some kind of a color background. So our background layer, we're going to click on underneath our letters. We can change the color directly here as the background color, but I like to just add a full layer. I'm going to click in and select that kind of beigey type of color. And then I can just, because I'm on a blank layer, I always check to make sure I have the right layer. Backgrounds are the worst if you put them on the wrong layer. And I'm going to put that directly underneath. And we're going to make it a little more orange afterwards with some texture, but we'll leave it just as that for now. What we now need to do is that sticker layer, that sticker outline. So it's going to reside above the background layer, but underneath our letters. So if I'm on my background, and I can rename this background keyboard, it is nice to keep our layers somewhat organized. We can call this one letter, oops. Oh, because it's locked, it's not going to let me rename it right now. I could go in and unlock it, rename it, but we won't do that. For the sake of keeping this moving, we're just going to add a new layer. We're going to take off the selection that I accidentally did. We're going to add a layer between our letters and our background. We are going to select that pure white that we put in here earlier, and we have our monoline brush. And for those who have already done some of our sticker tutorials here in the cafe, we know that this is pretty straightforward. Instead of trying to put the whole brush outside, what we do is just trace around the edge, and then it's the other half of the brush. So we want to make sure we're at the right size. I like it here around the 30% mark. I find that a good thickness, but you can adjust it, make it smaller or bigger. And all I'm going to do is trace around my letters and just the part that's close to the outside to build what the outside's going to be. And I can go slower and make this more perfect. I actually don't mind when things are less than perfect. It gives that nice homemade look. Okay, I can color fill in there, but I can also just color and draw. And you'll see we have a nice solid white outline. I love how this is going. Okay, so that is our sticker outline. I then want to add a bit of a shadow. It makes it pop. Everything is really super flat right now, so we're going to add the shadow and the texture just to give it a little oomph, or a little something extra. So for the shadow, what we're going to do is take the sticker outline and duplicate it. So you can see we have 2 copies of it now. We're going to click on the bottom one underneath. I'm going to change my color to that orange color and drag it in. And it's going to look like nothing happened. But if I go here, I can see the bottom one's orange. The reason I can't see it is because it's underneath the white one, so it's all hidden at the moment. If I go up and click on my transform tool, I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to pretend my light source is up here in the upper left. So I'm going to drag the shadow down to the right. And that's like automatically my go-to is always down to the right. I think it is for a lot of people when I look at other people's artwork as well. So the shadow's nice. Some people like to leave it like that. That has more of that cartoon animation type of feel. What you can do though, once you have just a little bit of it showing, not too much, we don't want to overdo it. If we go in here back to our friend the Gaussian blur, I'm going to put down my pencil and drag it up. And you'll see it'll start to blur and look more and more like a shadow. And it really makes this top sticker look like it's jumping off. So around 10-11%, I'm pretty happy with that. You can play with it. If you find it still too dark, you don't want more blur, but it's just too dark, you can always go in, click on the N, and drag down the opacity a little bit. Just make it a little less opaque. Something around 80% is pretty good. Man, coughing today. Not a good day to do a video. All right. So the last thing that we're going to do is just add a little bit of texture onto our background because it's looking pretty flat as well. So I'm going to click on my background, add a layer above it. I am going to go in the original that I showed you earlier, I used the brush that I'd gotten from someone else, and I really try when I do these tutorials to stick with things that you already have. So you can play around with all different textures that you find in here in your brush library. What I'm going to use today is under Industrial, this concrete block brush. And I'm going to keep that orange, the orange color that I already have selected there. I find it pairs nicely. And we are going to, so my brush size right now is at about 20%. Let's see how that goes. And I'm just going to brush it all over. And what it's doing, you can still see it's not applying like a solid orange. If I zoom really far in, I don't know if you can see this well, but it's just giving a nice little texture onto the background. So it gives it something, I don't know, it just adds a little more texture, a little more dimension to the piece that we're doing. So that and the shadow just make it pop a little bit more, make it look a little more realistic in what we've done. And that's it. We have created that joking sticker that I absolutely love. If you want to share it, just a reminder that we go up here to our actions menu. We click on the share button. If you want it to be a JPEG, for example, I click on JPEG. And I can save image, and now it's just going to be in my camera roll in my photos on my iPad, and I can upload it to Instagram or anywhere else that I want to share. So I hope you enjoyed this fun tutorial today. Make sure you've downloaded everything here in the notes, and check out some of our other videos with some other fun lettering tutorials. Okay, we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.